What's up, guys? Toyhouze here, and today I want to talk about the problem with Battlegrounds in the Burning Crusade. Now, as you know, Blizzard is addressing some of those current problems with the current implementation of same faction Battlegrounds starting on Friday, July 2nd and wrapping up July 6th. This is a test. Blizzard is allowing, same faction, mostly Horde versus Horde, to play in the same battleground against each other in order to reduce the extremely long queue times. Now, the one battleground that is the exception to this test is Alterac Valley, due to a lot of killing of the same faction NPCs that wouldn't make a lot of sense. And of course, the lore reason behind this is that it's a military training exercise to help, get better at it, and putting masks and tabards on the faction that's not the true Horde, right? So this is fixing the long queue times, and I think that this is a good move in Blizzard's end, but I think it also creates another problem, and I also think that this is sort of a solution for a symptom of a far greater problem. And that far greater problem is, of course, faction imbalance. Now, I'm sure you know all about the different faction imbalances that exist between the two. We've seen Blizzard try to tackle this with the implementation of Seal of Blood onto the Alliance, with Seal of the Martyr, and vice versa, Seal of Vengeance going over to the Horde, which I actually think was a great move. A lot of people were considering, switching factions if they were Alliance over to Horde, simply because as a Ret Paladin they wanted to be competitive. But I think that in general it's a good move to try to fix some of these issues. Now, I think the faction imbalance that's really playing out here is sort of stemming from the racials. So we have Hardiness for the Orcs, which is a 20% chance to resist a stun, which is passive, always on. There is literally nothing on the Alliance side as good as that. And then you also have Undead with Will of the Forsaken, which essentially is another trinket just for fears and charms. It is fantastic, and once again, there's really nothing comparable on the Alliance side. The best PvP racials on the Alliance side are stoneform, which is nerfed now to blind not being a poison. Perception is pretty good for humans, also known as the Stealth Finder 5000, matched with Paranoia. You can see stealth from 5 miles away. And of course, there's also Escape Artist for gnomes, which is a little bit better in the Burning Crusade, being instant cast. But again, the Horde racials are much better. But I dare say that the Horde racials are not even the biggest reason for the faction imbalance. I actually think the biggest reason for the faction imbalance is the perception of how game-breakingly good these racials are. No, don't get me wrong, I know how good these racials are. I am a warlock, and every time I cast Fear on an enemy, I know that on an undead, I know that pretty much I'm just doing it to get that cooldown. Like, it does basically nothing. But I think the perception of how good these racials are take all of the really good, serious PvP players onto the Horde side, which makes it so that if you look at some of Alliance win rates and Battlegrounds, you've noticed that Alliance typically lose most of their games. If you've even played Alliance, you'll probably be able to attest that depending on what battleground is the double weekend, then you're probably not going to be able to win that battleground for the entire weekend. I know myself, I tried this entire last Eye of the Storm weekend to finally just get my daily done, and I managed to get one game under my belt where we won. It's pretty tough to win as an Alliance player, let alone the other big reason that Battlegrounds have another issue, which is Premade versus Pug. I think this is another issue that hasn't really been talked about a lot, but I think it is certainly something that we're going to see more and more of. Basically, if you're a Premade, your chances of winning, I would say, are about 99%. Up against a Pug, there's really no way that a Pug can compete because of the level of coordination that a Premade has, not to mention the gatekeeping that typically happens within putting together a Premade group. You've always seen probably in trade chat or looking for group chat, looking for more Premade, 200 plus resilience or something like that. So you're guaranteeing you're going to have people with good gear, you're going to have them on Discord, you're going to have a great time. The only time you might lose is when you're up against another Premade. So this leads me to the questions that I want to ask you. Number one, why do you play Alliance if you're a serious PvPer? And two, why would you ever queue up for a battleground if you're not in a Premade? Because it seems like, and we're seeing this more and more, but a video game is constantly being optimized the longer it's been out. So, we're seeing players only boosting. We're seeing players only playing Horde if they want a PvP. For players who are serious about getting lots of honor, they're going to Premade because it's simply the best way to go about doing these things. Now, a lot of people are starting to say, after this cross-faction battleground implementation test, that if Blizzard were to implement this, we might as well rename World of Warcraft to World of Hordecraft. You might just see everyone playing undead and orcs up against each other over and over in PvP situations. And it is a known fact that the horde racials are in fact better. We have seen that in Wrath of the Lich King, humans had their racials buffed with the addition of every man for himself, which literally acted as a trinket, an extra trinket, so humans had 2 trinkets essentially, which was incredible. It was actually later nerfed to have the same cooldown as trinket. I forget which expansion, but one of those in the future, as well as the Night Elf Shadow meld becoming usable in combat, acting as a vanish. These 2 buffs to Alliance racials is a clear acknowledgement that Alliance racials simply were not as good, and quite frankly, everyone who's serious about PvP has known this, and they're moving over to Horde, which again is either creating the perception or quite actually bringing all of the serious PvPers over to the Horde. So we have this situation where Battlegrounds are essentially always going to be won by Horde, and now their queues are going to be lowered, and I think the incentive for playing Alliance is slowly going away. Frankly, I'm kind of curious, so why anyone would play Alliance? Originally for me, I played Alliance because in Vanilla Classic, you have the opportunity to have access to some of the best buffs in the game with Paladins as well as Blessing of Salvation, because Warlocks really had no form of threat reduction, which they now do in TBC with Soul Shatter. But now that the Horde have Paladins and we're starting to reach a sort of parity in terms of the things that Alliance had advantages over the Horde, I think that, I really can't think of a good reason why someone would play Alliance anymore. I mean, granted, you do have diplomacy as a human, and TBC does have a ton of reputations to grind. Definitely it's advantageous for that. But when it comes to PvP, I almost can't help but say that Horde is definitely the better faction to go on. And unless Blizzard addresses this in some way, perhaps implementing every man for himself and Shadow Meld being usable in combat, which would really, really be a huge change for the Burning Crusade, almost making this game not even what it used to be. But quite frankly, at this point, we're starting to see that TBC Classic is drifting further and further away from the original Burning Crusade that we knew, back in 2007. I don't know. I mean, at this point, do we just start implementing dual spec? Do we just bring Death Knights now rather than later? I don't know. Maybe we do. I'm not sure. Definitely have seen some very crazy changes in the last few weeks, especially with the same faction Battlegrounds test that's being run right now. However, I am interested to hear what you do have to say about this, so please, if you do have a moment, I'd love to see in the comment section. If you do play Alliance, why do you play Alliance? Are you serious about PvP? Why would you queue up without a group instead of a pre-made? And of course, maybe the reason for not being able to queue up in a pre-made is the vicious cycle of not having enough resilience. So you're an Alliance player, you have to just basically lose battleground after battleground in order to finally get that resilience to finally enter in a pre-made, which is pretty terrible. And if I had to go through that grind, I'd probably just opt out. So that's just kind of a problem with Battlegrounds right now, in my opinion. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I do know that probably more people are going to be pre-mating, more people are going to be playing Horde, especially now with this fix with the queue. Sorry to those people who re-rolled Alliance for the short queue times. I guess you never know what Blizzard's going to do next. So with all that said, guys, hopefully this will bring some attention to some of the issues that we're experiencing with Battlegrounds. If there's something I missed, please let me know in the comment section. But other than that, you guys know what to do, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.